What happens when your body no longer supports the life you built and you are forced to redesign how you live, work, and lead? Today's Wellness Hero, Edie Summers, shows what it looks like to reclaim energy and purpose after chronic fatigue, burnout, and long term health challenges. Edie is the author of The Memory of Health, a wellness consultant, speaker, and mind body instructor. Her work is grounded in lived experience. After a ski accident and surgery in her early 20s, Edie developed chronic fatigue and long term health challenges that reshaped her life. But rather than accept decline as her future, she began studying lifestyle centered approaches to well being, energy management, and resilience. Over time, that personal recovery became the foundation for her work with individuals and organizations navigating burnout, chronic illness, and performance under pressure. So, Edie, welcome. But before we talk about frameworks and practices, if you would take us back to that moment when you realized your body had kind of entered a new normal. What did it feel like to recognize that your old way of living was no longer sustainable?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And thank you, Tim, for that lovely introduction. And thank you, Dr. Bob and Breck, for inviting me, all three of you, for being here. And yes, so for me, that turning point, well, when I first noticed was my early 20s after I had a ski accident and I broke my knee. I had arthroscopic surgery. And then I noticed that I was sleeping all the time and I was sleeping like 10 to 12 hours a day. I was 22, I think, maybe 23. I forget now. It was a while ago. And then I realized over time that I, I labeled it later as, or learned that it was called chronic fatigue. That was definitely a turning point for me. I knew something was different. I was someone who had a lot of energy growing up. I was super active, skiing, case in point, and I was a dance major at the time. And then all of a sudden, my
So, what it feel like to kind of lose all that out of very quickly?
Yeah, emotionally, it was devastating because I was a dance major. It was really hard to reconcile. I didn't recognize myself. And then also in physical therapy, they told me that I had a lot of scar tissue in my knee, and they told me that after even 9 months of physical therapy, I was only going to be able to get about 90 degrees back in my knee. So that would have meant I couldn't dance and do a lot of other things too. So it was a huge point in my life where I was so young, but I had to kind of harness that internal like fortitude and drive and start navigating how to help myself.
Great. And so we'll see where that took you and how it can help others. But right now, I want to take a moment and remind our listeners and viewers that you are watching WellWave Now, and that's where timeless wisdom meets modern insight to help you live better and hopefully for longer.
Yeah. So, it's interesting. Most people just try to push through those early warning signs, but your body just kind of said, no, it's not just pushing through. So, Edie, what were I guess those early signs for you that you knew something deeper was wrong, well beyond just a normal recovery of your injury?
Yeah, Breck. So I think some of the deeper signs, first of all, I was sleeping more and then I had that chronic fatigue. And later I was able to label it also as I developed a new normal down the road, but I can definitely tell that, because of sleeping more. And also I would say I was developing depression because, they had me on I was on a lot of anti-inflammatories, which later turned into prescription anti-inflammatories because I couldn't get my knee. I was making progress in physical therapy, but not enough. And so they kept kind of upping the ante with, hey, let's take more ibuprofen, and hey, now let's try naproxen. And my body and my brain, everything just started crashing and slowing down.
Now, when you say you were sleeping more, Edie, was that where you just taking naps like Dr. Bob does, or were you?
Which I do too, by the way. No,
Yeah.
it was more like just needing more overall sleep, 10 to 12 hours a night, just exhausted constantly and not feeling like I could recover. My vitality was lower. So that was another sign. I felt fundamentally different. And I knew something was wrong. It just took me time to pinpoint what that was.
Yeah, that really affects your productivity, right? So, that chronic fatigue affecting productivity, does it start to also affect your identity of who you were?
Absolutely. So, yes. And I would say productivity down the road. I mean, I was very young and I've always had a natural drive, but later I'm someone, because of that drive, I had to figure out how to manage my energy to continue that productivity and continue to be the person I wanted to be. And what was the other part, Breck? Was the
Just your identity, because you were a
Yeah,
dancer. You
identity.
were a
Yeah, that was really, really hard because, again, I was young for one thing. I was a dance major, secondly. And then, yes, I was someone who naturally had a lot of drive. I was again, I didn't know this term back then, but I was a high performer. And to all of a sudden, I was someone who wanted to keep showing up. And I knew this was going to be a problem, right? Because my body was behaving differently. And at such a young age, that was a real internal dilemma. Like, I think I was either 22 or 23. I think it was 22. I'm 56 now, so it was a while ago.
Impact of you of losing that ability to dance and other things.
Yeah, it was really devastating. I was terrified. I was terrified that I wasn't going to be able to live the life that I wanted to. And I think that fear of not being able to live the life that I was a motivating factor in starting to seek help, like beyond. I mean, the physical therapists were great, but again, I was also being told you're only going to get your knee to about 90 degrees. That was also a motivating factor, that fear of not wanting to end up like that. So I set an intention for myself to figure it out, whatever it took to I didn't know what it was going to look like, but yeah, emotionally, I was really devastated. I mean, it was a real low point. And also when they put me on prescription anti-inflammatories, I was only on them a very short time, but I literally didn't get out of bed for a week. I was in school and I knew something was really wrong. I was like, this doesn't feel normal.
When did you begin to realize, or when did it dawn on you that the standard approaches of physical therapy and anti-inflammatories weren't going to get you where you wanted to be and feel?
I think that's such a great question, Tim. I think when I was being told over and over again in physical therapy, this is as far as you're going to get, that 90-degree mark with your knee. And it was unacceptable to me. That was a turning point. So that's when I went to see a naturopath because I was absolutely desperate. I was desperate for a solution.
That's just ridiculous that they would even say that, in my opinion. I mean, it's a joke. First of all, they didn't know that. They didn't have any evidence or data to suggest that that was going to be the case. They're just out there speculating and destroying your future by letting you know that it's not going to be the way you want it to go. It's crazy. I don't know. People need to understand that some things need to go over the head and over off the shoulder and leave behind, because they didn't help you any, unfortunately, and I can see how it turned your life inside out. It just,
Hmm.
you
Yep.
know, because it put you on a different thought pathway. Oh God, I got to go this way, and what am I going to do now? The type of thing. I'm so sad about that. Really, I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
you so
appreciate
you're yep,
that.
yep, and so you were, let's say, 22, 23. Where were you living at the time, Edie?
I was living in my grandmother's basement it was in college. I was about halfway through college and yeah, I remember breaking
And that
down in the
and that
bathroom. Oh, go ahead.
and that was that no, I'm sorry, I said that you remember breaking down the bathroom. I guess
Yeah,
is an important point
I
before
was so
so what
devastated.
mhm. So had your grandmother or your family, had they known about naturopaths? How did you know, from central Nebraska, and I'd never heard of a naturopath at age
Right.
22. So even though I was out in California at the time, but I still hadn't heard of a naturopath. So how'd that come to your attention?
Yeah, and I definitely want to hear what you have to say too, Dr. Bob. I had no idea. And we didn't have the internet back then. I can't remember how I found a naturopath. I was so desperate that honestly, I don't remember. But I don't know anyone. I don't think anyone told me. I don't think anyone recommended it to me. I think I just started looking for other types of practitioners, probably through the
Yeah, and they
phone
show
book.
up.
Go
They
ahead.
show up when you're looking for something. It will show up.
Yeah. Yes.
When you're focused on it. Yeah, I'd bet a lot of money right now that you achieved more than a 90-degree bend in your leg.
I got it all the way back. I did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Bob always likes to rush to the end of the story. So, but we're glad you got it back. But we're not going to let
I
you
love
rush to the
that.
end of the story with that, with Bob.
and next week on WellWaveNOW.
I love that. But yeah, it was, I love that also. Who was saying that, Dr. Bob or Tim, that Yes, it does kind of show up. I probably used the phone book, and yeah, I actually found the perfect naturopath. He was
What
amazing.
is that? What is the phone book? What is some of our listeners
Another
aren't going to know what that
that's another
is.
topic.
Yeah, yeah. Keep
But the
plugging.
first person I went to see was incredible. First of all, he listened to my story. He didn't try to kind of very quick, I don't have anything against medical professionals. I feel like they're doing the best they can, but you really need time to hear someone's story and understand where they're coming from so you can get the full picture. He spent an hour and a half with me and he knew right off the bat how to help me. He started recommending like arnica for my knee and then internal like natural
Okay, yeah, that's it. You're
anti-inflammatories.
letting Dr. Bob rush the story.
We're going to jump into that, because there's a lot of our listeners like you, Edie, that probably feel stuck, right? They're dealing with something, they don't know what to do, and they're feeling stuck. So after the break, we'll talk about the shifts that you made and to move forward rather than just stay stuck. But first, let's take a quick break and talk about Brain IQ pain eraser roll-on used by our very own Tim Daniels. After many years of knee damage as a D1 athlete and avid exerciser, he gets relief from Brain IQ Pain Eraser. It delivers instant targeted relief using advanced nanotechnology combined with powerful nutrition and natural ingredients that absorb quickly right where you need them. No pills, no mess. Just roll it on and get back to moving. It's ideal for your lower back pain, knee pain, shoulder pain, or just joint discomfort and everyday aches and pains. It makes it a great option for active adults and busy professionals and anyone just tired of pain just slowing them down. So it's compact, easy to use, and effective. It's Brain IQ Pain Eraser, and it works where and when you need it. We will leave a link in the show notes for you. So now back to the show, Tim.
And I think it has that arnica in it that we won't let Edie talk about just
It
yet.
does.
Love arnica.
Go ahead, Bob.
Point that I really wanted to make early on before being accused of pushing the story too far was what you did, Edie, which I find with so many of my clients and me in particular several times during my life, and I'm sure Tim and Breck have both experienced this, where we were told something by conventional care people because that was their training, that's what they knew, and that's what their opinion was, right?
Yeah.
And my clients, many of my clients, all of us, we've said, no, that's not the way it's going to go. It's not going to go
Mhm.
that way.
Mhm.
In other words, we
Yeah.
had a different view of our future besides the one that they were painting. And so I'm encouraging our listeners to make sure not to be locked in, but to be understanding that people are expressing their opinions about the future. It could be based on data, but there's always a bell curve where there's people in the middle who would be subject to what their conclusions are. And then there's people on the fringes that there's no way that their conclusions are active with those people. And so I
Mhm.
might acknowledge you for just saying my future is going to be different and I'm going to find an answer. And I had to do that several times in my life. And it's really great when people do that. So for our listeners, do it.
Right. And so that's a good point. We talked about, you gotta take that leadership. I think as, one of our favorite MDs actually said, he said, look, people come to me and say they want me to heal you. I can help you, but I'm not the biggest part of it. You got to listen. You got to be an active participant in it. And that's when you're getting good counsel.
Mhm.
So what do you think, what think you allowed you to make that mental shift that we just
Mm.
talked about, that says, I'm gonna and you really never accepted limitation, but what you said, I'm not going to accept this and begin that look. What was that really framing um that helped you do that?
Yeah, so that's such a great question, Tim. So I'm going to answer it in two ways. First, I think it was my internal drive that I naturally had, that I harnessed. However, it was also an intention that I made. And I kind of feel like that was a spiritual element, which I didn't know at the
Mhm.
time that it was spiritual, but it's literally an agreement that I made with myself that I would find the answer. And it was not just for my knee, it was also for my chronic fatigue that was out of that. Now, I do have a new normal with that, which I think we're going to talk about. However, it was setting an intention that made all the difference because I literally was promising myself that I would find the answer, no
Right.
matter how long
So
it
would you call that kind of self compassion for yourself? how would you describe what that was?
I almost felt like internal programming, but maybe also in agreement with my higher self. I'm not sure. I just, however intentions work, I'm not even sure I fully understand them. I just know that it was an agreement that I knew I was going to follow through on because I made that intention.
What did that take? I mean, internally, personally, for yourself, what did that finally, that threshold that took you over the edge to say, okay, I don't need to believe what everyone else
Mm.
is telling me. I can do something about this. What was that turning point for you?
Yeah, I think also part of it was because I was a major and I love dance so much, and it was really hard to imagine not dancing again ever. I just couldn't imagine that. And so I think that was also a practical and maybe also spiritual driving force. And the reason I made those intentions to find the answer to get my knee all the way back and then later find ways to heal my chronic fatigue or, make it much better is because just the fact alone that I couldn't imagine myself not dancing again, because that's something that was so near and dear to my heart. It's something I'd been doing since I was 5 years old. And I wasn't done. I wasn't done dancing. I mean, now today, I'm a fitness instructor and I actually teach dance fitness. But for years, I was a professional dancer and when I finally got my knee back to be able to perform again and be on the stage was a huge accomplishment
So,
and such
so,
such an emotional thing
so
for
what
me.
type
So I think Breck, that might have been part of it too, is just wanting to dance again. And so having to figure out how whatever it took to make that happen.
so what type brief divergence here. So what type of dance did you do when you were a professional in, and what type do you teach now?
Yeah, so when I was professional, I did world dance. So I did like flamenco and dances from all over the world, primarily the Middle East, actually, but Chinese ballet also did dances from Israel, Iran, Armenia, all over the world. And flamenco was one of my favorites. But then now I teach dance fitness. So it's a way that I can continue to share my love of dance. And then growing up, I studied jazz, ballet, modern, contemporary, and I was a dance major for a while. So it's been in my life forever. But yeah, I was a professional dancer for 10 years. I also did some jazz professionally, like in a
Yeah,
jazz company.
yeah. Bob's just learning. He's raising his hand because he's just learning to dance. Yes.
I'm impressed with all the dancing that you've done and do. My
Thank you.
question is, how did you get interested in dance in the beginning?
You
How
know,
young were you?
that's such a great question. I think I was 5 when I started with tap. It's probably something my parents
Really?
maybe they offered it to me and, it's just something I started doing. And then later, when I was in elementary school, a ballet company literally moved into the basement of the school, maybe to pay. It was a way for the school to help pay for the school. I'm not sure. But so I started taking ballet at that age. But yeah, I've been dancing since I was 5. And yeah,
Wow.
I've just never stopped. So
Nice.
Well, Edie, for other people living in, with a so-called invisible condition,
yeah.
what are some important boundaries that they must set for themselves?
Yes, I think this is a really great question because, so again, the other component of this story is the chronic fatigue that I developed. And later I was diagnosed with CFS, which is chronic fatigue syndrome. So many people, and I know so many people in the invisible illness communities, whether they have CFS or something else. And I would say the most important thing is to have that strong boundary around self-care and downtime. A lot of us, it's hard for people to say, no, I'm not able to do that right now. And you don't need to explain yourself. If you need more extra downtime, I still need extra downtime than the average person. And I think for many years, I felt the need to explain it or somehow qualify that. It's just a boundary that you can set and you don't need to explain yourself, whether or not someone understands it. I think that's something that a lot of people with invisible illnesses struggle with because, they might get the comments like, well, you don't look sick, or you don't look like
That
you might
cracks
have
me up.
something.
That cracks me up when people say that. You don't look sick. It's like, okay, get in
Yeah,
my body and see how
your
you
labs
feel.
are normal. But what does normal mean?
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
so just knowing that it's okay if you need extra time to sleep or rest or reboot or whatever it is, or take care of yourself, whatever it is, it's okay. And that's, I think, something that people struggle with and also need permission for.
Yeah, I like that.
That's That's an important message.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, really like that message. So thank you.
Thank
So
you.
Edie, once you had the mindset change and that then allowed you to change some of your daily routine, next we want to talk about how you structured beyond that routine to get to your healing.
Yeah.
So in the next segment here, we want to find out, we want to get to what Bob was trying to jump the gun on. You didn't rely on a fix, right? There wasn't like, oh, hey, there's going to be some quick fix here. You had to kind of rebuild life through a system of habits, right? So let's talk about that. What was your daily practices? What did you do to create these new habits?
Yes, absolutely. It's definitely a lifestyle. I would say some of the biggest ones for me are managing stress during the day so that I can sleep better at night because that deep sleep is so important. And I'm one of those highly sensitive individuals, and that may have contributed partly to my chronic fatigue. So managing stress is really important. I would also say something that I don't hear a lot of people talking about is avoiding or reducing irritants, whether that's food or synthetic chemicals, because those can not only create stress in your body, they can also interfere with sleep and they can create inflammation if you're sensitive to things. So, and then deep nutrition, really important. And that's something I had to learn over time, like how to cook and, what is nutrition really, even like what is real food, and lots of self-care time and downtime, the biggest things that I do every day.
Can you pinpoint one thing that really resulted in improving your energy?
Yes, I would say managing stress during the day so that I can sleep better at night. And that took me a while to figure out because think about it like, and I'm sure Dr. Bob, you could probably go into this on a deeper level or any of you, but if your stress levels get out of control during the day, that is going to impact your sleep. And then it becomes a vicious cycle. And with someone with a more sensitive nervous system or a nervous system that's, say, out of whack, whether it's upregulated or downregulated, if it's I've just figured out that managing stress during the day, and there are many different ways I do that. Let's say practicing gentle yoga, practicing mindfulness, so that manages my stress and even what I'm eating, so it's not going to stress my body out like a lot of refined sugar. Managing stress during the day has made a huge difference for me, and it took practice. It took practice to get there, but then I started sleeping better.
The mindfulness thing, that's a term that has become common to the point that I think it's lost its meaning. So
Yeah,
what
I agree.
really was mindfulness?
Yes. So so it has Buddhist roots, and which I think is great, and they go really deep. And I do practice mindfulness, let's say through yoga and trying to be more present through yoga, kind of calming down and being more present through yoga. But I also think that mindfulness is a wellness tool. And the best way I can describe it, this is how I experienced it. And this is also the way that Deepak Chopra describes mindfulness, at least one way, is how mindfulness closes the gap or lessens the gap between symptoms and well-being. So if you can slow down and tune in and notice the signals that your body is sending you, which is really one of the biggest things that also helped me initially and still does to this day in terms of managing stress or noticing what I'm sensitive to, noticing and being mindful of paying attention to the symptoms and thinking of symptoms as signals that my body's sending to me, then I can adjust what I'm doing. That's been a huge, huge help for me. But I agree, Tim, that mindfulness is thrown around a lot, but I still hold a lot of reverence for it because it has helped me so much. I didn't call it mindfulness back in the day. I just knew that I had become more aware of my internal signals coming from my body because I had developed chronic fatigue. And maybe some people call that interoception. I don't know. I've heard that term too. And
What do you think just came to me? What do you think triggered? So you had the accident, and yes, then you were on the drugs for a while, but only for a short period of time.
yeah,
What do you think triggered your chronic fatigue out of that?
yeah,
Was it the stress and the
that's
life
such a
change?
great
What led the
question.
fatigue? What triggered it?
Yeah, and I don't want to also say that before anti-inflammatories and then prescription anti-inflammatories, I was on prescription painkillers for a while too after surgery. So that's such a great question, Tim, and it's something that I've thought a lot about. I have some theories. it was either the stress of the surgery itself. Like I have heard other people say that they felt different after having surgery. It's possible that it was the surgery itself, maybe going under, just being under, and then somehow that changed my nervous system. It could have been all the prescription drugs, whether it was the anti-inflammatories and the painkillers. Maybe it was just severe stress of the accident and surgery combined. I'm still not sure to this day, but something changed my nervous system, and it's something that has since gone up and down. It's something, but I do have a new normal, and I have to stay on top of it. As long as I take really good care of myself, I can feel my nervous system, let's say, calming down for lack of a better term, but it's a little more sensitized to stress than it was before. So I don't really know the answer to that. Maybe Dr. Bob has some ideas about.
Well, I'm listening to your story, which is really fascinating. It occurs for me like you had an injury which was shocking to you.
Yeah.
Might not have been shocking to other people, but for you, it was shocking, and that's what's critical. It's shocking to you, and then you're hearing that your life is going to be different, which
Mhm.
did not fit with your future vision for yourself.
Right.
And I think that just started driving the whole thing.
Mm,
Because you went through I totally understand being depressed after that for a while because like, wow, they're telling me this and I don't like this. It's gonna keep me from doing what I've always wanted to do since I was 5 years old,
yeah.
and, so how am I gonna fix this? And then you got determined to fix it, but you still, you're still in the pattern of the reaction to the whole thing. And I
Could
agree
be.
with you that your automatic stress reactions were very prominently developed during that extended
Hmm.
recovery time.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's what's important. And you figured out a way to manage the expression of the stress
Hmm.
by doing certain practices, which is really great.
Yes.
And there's probably even more. You'll probably in the next 6 months to a year, you'll probably figure out how to unlock it completely. I bet.
I
Yeah. So
I
you
appreciate. Go ahead.
You covered the mindfulness part of your recovery, but I'm going to use a Dr. Bob terminology here, a multimodal approach. So you did more than just mindfulness, right? You were doing
Yes.
movement and breath
Yes.
work. Explain what you were doing in those areas, movement and breath work, as well as
Yes. So
mindfulness.
yes, and this is what these are such great questions. This is another reason why I love yoga. And now I have to qualify this. I want to say that in my community, I do run communities with people that have invisible illnesses, chronic fatigue, CFS, and sometimes yoga, people don't like to hear me talk about yoga. But there are different types of yoga. Yoga is a great way to practice mindfulness, breath work, meditation. It's a very slow way to keep your nervous system kind of in the relaxation response as opposed to sending it off into fight or flight or whatever that the term might be. I know that might be like a that may not be the
Your perfect terminology. Perfect. Perfect.
but thank you. But that's one of the reasons I love something like yoga, but it could be any mind, body, spirit practice, right? It could be, for me, that's one of the ones I love. And maybe because of my dance background, yoga reminds me of dance, like a kind of a slow dance in a way. So it really fits me. But, other people like Tai Chi, Qigong, just deeper breathing can help. I also love to forest bathe. I love to, when I can get outside and let's say we have forests all over here in Oregon. So you can walk slowly and kind of experience that mindfulness and presence and deep breathing deeper. And so I hope that's answering your question, Breck, but those are some of the things that really help me. And practicing yoga over time has helped me to feel calmer on a regular basis. And I think it's helped my nervous system. And I have to say that there have been a couple points in my 20s, and even now, I would say that yes, my nervous system has felt almost normal, if not normal. I think the challenge for me has been there is that still a little bit of it's a little more sensitized. And so I feel like I have to stay on top of it. But maybe that's also me just, having more awareness that I did when I was younger, because I know I was young. When I was young, I was also more sensitive than the average person.
Yeah, and I think I forget there was another one of our wellness heroes, Susie Simonson, who
Hmm.
actually like had a stroke at like age 27, I think it
Hmm.
was, and
Mm.
hadn't had the surgery of it. she just realized that when for her, there were certain triggers, and as it's become kind of a common element. And so therefore I think she did some journaling, another one did some journaling to really say, this is what affects me. I've got to have an understanding of that, and I've got to manage that. I hear you saying some of the same things, being in tune with your body, being in tune with what's happening, and understand that and stay in that state and be able to then make your adjustments as you go along.
Absolutely. And I have more awareness than I did. I mean, I'm grateful in some ways because I have more awareness now and overall of what helps me stay well than I did when I was younger.
Now, what is so you got your yoga. I'm one of those ones that don't like to go too deep into yoga because,
Yeah.
frankly, it's just because of all the spiritual stuff people put on yoga that doesn't sit with me.
Yeah.
But that's just me. Okay, but I do like Tai Chi because
Yeah.
and that
Love Tai
portion of it
Chi.
because it's separate. But that said or not said, either way, how we want to do it, are all parts of your program, you consider them equally important now, or is there one of these habits you think was just the key, really the key to unlocking, and the rest has just been more incremental help to you?
I would say, so this is a really interesting question because this kind of reminds me of what you were asking me to. I think if I had to choose one, it would be managing my stress during the day. However, I remember having a conversation with, I forget her name now. She developed chronic symptoms. She's a journalist and she wrote a book. I forget the name of the book now, but I interviewed her a while ago. And she was saying to me, when I asked her a similar question, was it one thing that helped you, one specific thing? And she said to me something that really resonated with me. That she thought it was a combination of things that almost like creates like that. It's almost like it gets you to a place where I can't think of the right terminology now, but it gets you like over that hump where it's a confluence of practices. So I have to say, if I had to choose one, I would say stress management during the day specifically. But I
Okay.
think it is a common because nutrition is also super important. It's kind of getting that tipping point of well-being. It's
What you're
usually
describing,
it's a combination of things, yeah. But managing stress.
what you're
So
describing,
what
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 you
did you change in your nutrition and your way of fueling yourself?
So, first of all, I had to learn how to cook. That was really important because you can't really replace fresh food. I don't do well with preservatives and I don't do well with a lot of like kind of synthetic chemicals that are in food. So, cooking makes a big difference because there's less things I can't name that I'm consuming. But also early on, before I learned how to cook, I learned about superfoods, and I know that term is thrown around a lot too, but initially those really helped me, like spirulina. Like I used to be so I got into the natural foods industry because of that naturopath that I met. He sent me to a natural food store and then I was like, what he did helped me. And so then I started working there. And then out of that, I started learning about nutrition in general, which really organic foods really helped me. But then I also started taking like, let's say green superfoods, even herbs, which are considered food. And so things like that also help me. And I know it can be controversial, right, to talk about supplements, but I have to say, I'm a huge fan and there can be high quality supplements.
Huh.
So I would say superfoods,
What what
organic.
what, what
Yeah,
do
I
you
was going
think
to
is
say, what do you think is
controversial talking about
controversial?
supplements, Edie?
Well, not for me, but I think that I think there's a battle going on. I've seen it on many levels between mainstream and alternative medicine, and I really wish there weren't. But I mean, I've studied this, both for my book and for my professional life. Like, aren't the same companies that now make the pharmaceutical drugs, didn't they used to make the vitamins and minerals and are they used to offer those supplements? And now some of them are making them again, but isn't there a competition that way? And then there's also a competition between, let's say, mainstream and alternative medicine. I mean, I know these are
Yeah,
big topics.
I just think yeah, I think there's just what I would look at. I think I don't think there's, MD, I don't know about the pharma, but most MDs would not say wouldn't be opposed to supplement. I think they have a limited knowledge of them. That will say
Yeah,
they know B,
true.
they know
Yeah,
B, they know B, they know E. They say do this for that. I
yeah,
don't think they
that's
have
true.
they've just been exposed to learn the full realm of what supplementation might be able to do for an individual.
They really serve two different purposes. Pharmaceuticals are supposed to be for short-term use, acute care kind of situations, where nutrition supplements are supposed to be for your longevity, right? It's supposed to
Right.
be supporting your immune system, supporting your building blocks of your body. So I think
Hmm.
they have two different purposes. But Dr.
Yeah.
Bob is more the expert here. He studied the effects of drugs on brains for 20 some odd years.
Wow.
Yeah. But I've got a different question for Dr. Bob
What's that?
on that one. So, it gets back to this, we want Brett called it, you went back to your multimodal item, but also, what Edie talked about there, she talked about all these different things that she's done for herself. So, and it's really kind of just changed her whole lifestyle around. So when you hear Edie describe her energy management as a lifestyle system rather than a fix, what stands out to you clinically in that approach?
That's a big question.
And you're a big brain to answer that, Bob. Come on.
And I think what Edie said is really, really good. She was identifying, that's why I was kind of trying to get in there, and I'll get in now. She was identifying a multimodal strategy for, we're asking Edie, what's the one thing? But most of the time there isn't one thing. And she was saying that to us by saying, well, all this stuff that I did was important. And I believe it's all important because number one, we don't exactly know if one thing is going to get the job done anyway. And the other thing is we're living life where we have all kinds of inputs coming in together. So I think the greatest thing is that she understands that there's a lot of different things, Edie, that you have to do, that you want to do, that work for you. You figured out workability for yourself because you went from being, I'm just going to say, incapacitated in a way, especially with respect to your dancing future. It was not happening for quite a while. To now, look at what you're doing now. You're doing everything you want to do, and you're managing your energy really well by all of these different things you identified. And the things that are causing trouble for you. What I think is really interesting is, what's the title of your book?
It's called The Memory of Health.
Right. The memory of health. What I say you have done is, because the memory of health implies that you had health in the past.
Yeah. Yes.
And what I said you've done is you've taken the memory of health and you transmuted it to your future.
Mm.
So when you started looking at your future of health, it
Mm.
was dance, and it was, great energy and higher performance and all the things you wanted to produce. So I love the title.
Thank
And I
you.
think
I
that it's
appreciate
really
that.
instructive for people to know that when they want to focus on the future, it's the future of what we really want, not the future that is told to us, like, you'll never get more than 90-degree bend, and you'll never dance again, and all that kind of stuff. So it's just focusing, and you focused. I think your biggest success is you focused on exactly what you wanted to produce. You knew what you wanted to produce, and that was what I call the true future vision. And it's fabulous, and congratulations for
Thank
you
you.
doing that.
Thank you,
Yeah, and
Dr.
not, and
Bob.
not only, Edie,
Thank you.
yeah, not only have you done that for yourself personally, right? You are now, it's become your life work to help others as well.
Right.
Yes.
Before we go into that, Edie focused us where she wanted us in this one, where she said
Oh,
before
geez.
we talked about this. I'm going in my chronic fatigue. That's the other part of the story. So we just spent about 15 minutes on that. But we left out the finish to how'd you get your knee back physically.
Oh,
And you talk about
yes.
your doctor, or naturopath gave you some arnica and that started you down the path. So what
Yeah.
physically brought the knee back for you?
Yes.
Before
So,
we go into
yeah,
the
and I
part.
thank you for circling back to that, Tim. Yes. Okay. So first of all, I stopped taking, I know you're not supposed to take yourself off of drugs, but I did. I took myself off the prescription anti-inflammatory and the ibuprofen because I wasn't responding well to them. They were creating inflammation in my body. And so I literally couldn't move through the scar tissue because I had inflammation in my body. All of the things that the naturopath recommended worked. The topical arnica, plus like I was taking papaya enzyme, bromelain internally, and devil's claw, I think. But then those started helping, and then I was working on it nonstop, both in physical therapy. It's very painful to work through scar tissue. You pretty much have to put pressure on it and like push down. But I was also doing it at home nonstop. Scoot up to the wall, put my knee up there, and then push. But having natural help and not having the kind of deterrent of what was causing inflammation. And I mean, obviously it worked up to 90 degrees, but it was natural solutions plus just pure, like, I guess, desire to get it back and just I worked on it nonstop, pushing it down and then taking what he prescribed. And finally I got it back. I think it took about a year. And then I had to rebuild my muscle. I had to start, it was hard to walk. I had to start walking. But yeah, it took about a year to get it back. But the physical therapists were like, they couldn't believe it. They were like, oh, look at this. You're getting your knee all the way back.
So how old were you when you fully consider yourself fully recovered and you
So
had your knee?
I'll say 23. And then, yeah. So but then after that was when I started realizing, like, oh, I have this residual effect of sleeping a lot and chronic fatigue. I was like, that became more on my awareness level after I got my knee back, because, my focus was my knee at first.
Right.
Yeah. Very
Okay.
interesting.
So now you got your knee back, you got
Yeah.
your energy management system going.
Yeah.
And so as Brett started us down the path there, take us into what prompted you to then write the Memory of Health and start reaching out and doing your work with other people.
Yep.
Well,
Helping
I
others.
I appreciate that. Well, I have to say, if I'm being totally honest, I mean, I am an English major and I had a friend who was also an English major, and then we also worked in the natural foods industry together. And I have to say, the first thing that got me started was she said to me, I don't know why you don't write a book. And so I have to give her credit for that, because I think that got me started. Because again, the part of me that's that high performer was like, well, of course, now I have to write a book. But then it took me 10 years and I was really slow to write it because I needed a lot of downtime. There's a lot of research in it, but I think ultimately I wanted to have it be a resource for other people. So it chronicles it's also a memoir. And then it has a ton of research because I was in grad school for part of it. So I learned how to research. And then, so it also reminds me, though, of what to do and what helped me. So I want it, if nothing else, to be a resource for people and a way to feel comforted. A lot of people say that they feel hopeful after they've read it because it makes them feel like there's hope, right? Like whatever their situation is, there's hope. I think that's
So you do a lot. So you've done that for individuals and for consumers, but you're also, I believe, working with leaders and organizations and in the burnout realm too. That's another part of your work, is it not?
yeah. I have, and I thank you, Tim. And I have to some degree, yes. I have here and there, and yes, and I have high performers that I've either done interviews with, and I've worked with some startups and businesses. And what I'm hearing people say is, first of all, in my own research, and not just reading the research, I should say, burnout and chronic fatigue are on the rise, both at work and personally. And I'm hearing high performers and leaders and business owners all say there's like a taboo around it, right? Like no one wants to talk about the fact that they feel tired. No one wants to talk about the fact that they're burning out, especially if you're a high performer, right? Or if you own a business or if you're leading other people, you don't want to admit that. But I think what I'm hearing is that people have admitted it to me and it's becoming more part of the conversation. And I'm just part of that conversation. That I think there are a lot of people that are having that conversation now, that we need a new way of doing things. But that's what I've experienced in working with people on different levels, is in that space, is that it's a little easier to talk about it. And then what are some of the solutions, right? Like a big one is having that offline time, that downtime, even just to let your brain like kind of go idle so it can get creative again, come up with solutions and let it rest. If anything else, just giving yourself permission to go offline more, because we're all so tied to everything that's happening, in this world, which is great. It's great to have this as a way to connect, but yeah, I hope that answers your
So,
question. There's there's
Edie, are there any misconceptions that business owners and high performers have about resilience that come to mind?
Well, I would say one of the biggest misconceptions is that it's not a big deal. Like if you aren't resilient, like you can kind of power through it. But I think the truth is, and I saw this written somewhere, that the number one reason that businesses fail is because of burnout. Let's say you're a high performer and you have your own business or whatever your situation is. If you aren't resilient, and everything else is gonna fall apart. So I think thinking that resilience isn't a big deal or that it's not really a big deal. Like you can kind of power through it. Whereas that it's a very big deal. Whereas resilience, think about it like in terms of life force, resilience is what keeps you alive, right? Like if you can bounce back from something, it's what keeps you alive. And the same thing is true for your business. You have to allow for that space to refill and power yourself up again so that you can come back stronger. So it's okay to talk about resilience. It's okay to talk about it.
Well,
That's what I would say.
thank you for that, Edie. And where can our listeners find your book? Number one, The Memory of Health.
Well, I really appreciate that. It is on Amazon, and it's on a lot of the online retailers, Barnes and Noble, even Walmart. But the gift version that's in color interior is on lulu.com only. So that's my favorite version because I'm a big fan of color. So I recommend Lulu, but it is everywhere. Thank you.
Okay, and then how can people reach you directly? Do you have a website? Do you email? What would you like to give our
Yes,
listeners?
actually, that is true. Yes, I do have a website, ediesummers.com, and then yes, there is a way to contact me directly from there. It goes straight to my email. So, and I'm on social media everywhere. So, thank you, Breck. I
Okay.
appreciate that, and thank you to all of you so much.
Yeah. No, thank you for being our guest today. And your story reminds us that burnout and chronic fatigue are not personal failures. They're signals that something in your system needs to change, right? There's something in your life that needs to give. And I appreciate you giving us all the tips that you did in your own personal journey. And your self, awareness of what was going on. You're an advocate for your own health. Making some lifestyle changes to restore again, your own energy and your own healing path. And it's not always, that full recovery isn't always a linear process, right? There can be some
Right.
bumps along the way. So
Yeah.
yeah. For those facing long-term health challenges or leadership burnout, Edie's work offers both, a hope and a reminder that you can do it, and you can have that life that is the new normal, as you mentioned before, Edie. So please subscribe to the Wellness Wave Club YouTube channel, join our Facebook community, and share this episode with somebody who's feeling stuck in survival mode right now. And until next time, everyone, stay curious, stay empowered, and always remember, wellness, it's in you.